Just a quick reminder, if you're not happy with your grade, you can do some optional assignments, yes? 5 questions. Has anybody done it besides a couple? Okay. All right. Let's do it midnight tonight. Okay. All right. Hey, guys, we're actually getting pretty close to the end here of this module 19. The end of. So when you get back next Wednesday, we'll probably be wrapping up. So you'll probably be looking at tests next Friday. Okay. Sorry. What? So when's your book review? What day? That's the following Tuesday. Yeah. Okay. So listen, you got 5 days, 4 days, 5 days, whatever. You should take advantage of that and read. Okay. Read. Okay, and if you don't have a book yet, and you're not going to see me, send me a title, like Michael did today, and I'll approve it, or not approve it. Okay? All right, so, last thing we talked about was, hi.
I think the book reviews due on Friday. This is the day
Next Friday?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll push that back. If you have a test, I'm not going to have a test and a book review on the same day. That would be silly, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would do that.
So rather than pushing the test back, I'd push the paper.
Oh, sounds good.
Which would give you the weekend.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Does anybody have an issue with this? Okay. So tell me what the date is Monday next.
The Monday after it?
Yeah.
The 27th.
27th?
Yeah.
At midnight.
Good enough for me?
And I'll set up a youturnitin.com through Canvas. Okay? And don't even try to get AI to write this for you. I'm on you. I know how high school students write.
Okay, but could we make our own and then have the AI do it and then like compare them? Because that would be fun.
Why not? Guys, you're allowed, listen, when you write these, you're allowed to read other book reviews over the same book you've read. In fact, you can quote those in your paper. Like this book review from the New York Times said this about the book.
My AI really said.
And then quote the whole thing. Have you been paying attention to this AI, the Microsoft AI thing? Like, it is struggling. Like, it's confused about its existence. Did you read that? Like, some of the things it's saying, like, because people are trying to trip it up. And it's bothering it that it's not, like, it doesn't have an existence. It's kind of weird. It's going to learn. It's scary. Because this thing learns. This AI learns. And if it's on the internet, what can it get to? You know what I mean? Like, can it hack NORAD? Okay, that's important.
That's what they say.
Okay.
Like all of its like training is like from like 2019.
Okay.
Like up to now, it's like
Scary stuff, man. I'm like, woo.
ask it correctly. It's classified information.
I mean, you can try. Okay. All right. So, guys, last thing we talked about was Social Security. One of the things Roosevelt wanted to do was tax the rich. And we did this at the early part of the century. Remember when they broke up some of the monopolies? Right? Standard Oil. Railroads. Okay. So these are like conglomerates, big businesses. Okay, so trying to break some of those up. You got gas, electric companies that control everything. They're going to break those up. Okay, And then they're going to start to use something in the Constitution that's always been there. So those of you that did the homework, you were given a question over this, and that is the use of the Interstate Commerce Clause. Okay, it's always been in there, but rarely used by our government. Today, it is used all around us. So what this clause allows for is the government to regulate companies that are interstate. So let me just give you an example. Let's say you're going to build a house in Wichita, Kansas, right? Now, the first thing you're going to do is pour concrete, right? So you call Andale Ready Mix. Okay, they come out. Now, when you do concrete, you need rebar, right? You guys know what rebar is? It's like metal that you put in there. It makes it stronger. Now, is that rebar made in Kansas? The sand, the gravel for the concrete all comes from Kansas, but the rebar might come from out of state. And then you're going to frame your house with wood. Do a wood frame, right? Did we cut down that lumber in Kansas? No, we don't have any trees. So where do we get the lumber? Obviously out of state, but chances are, where does it come from? Northwestern Canada. We get a lot of our lumber from Canada. So that is crossing state lines. That's interstate commerce. So guess what the government says? Since you are bringing those parts of the house, the shingles on the roof, everything, the nails, the screws, and all the things you use are coming in from out of state, they have the ability to regulate the housing industry. Builders of homes, roofers, they get to regulate that because of this clause in the Constitution. So anytime commerce crosses state lines, the government can regulate. You guys have heard of OSHA? Occupational Safety Hazard, right? Okay. They're paying. No, they're paying, right? Like Trade Academy, anybody in Trade Academy? Okay. But you've got to follow these regulations, building codes, and so forth. And even where I work, as I sit, if I were to be a person that sat at a computer all day typing, okay, and I got carpal tunnel, well, I probably got carpal tunnel because why? Repetitive motion in a bad position. So I need a new desk. I need a new chair. I got back problems. OSHA comes in and says, you need to change all the desks in this office building. Okay. Roofers have to have, they have to be tied down. They have to have safety latch. Okay, these sorts of things. Okay. This all comes from that. Okay, and the federal government used to not do this at all. So most of the regulations we have today, which are in the tens of thousands of regulations that we have to live under, our businesses have to abide by, and so forth, come from this. Okay? So this just grants a whole new wealth of power to the federal government. You with me? That's a change. Okay? All right. Now, unions. Roosevelt wanted to improve the lot of workers that work in unions. Okay? So they're going to create the National Labor Relations Act is going to create the National Labor Relations Board. Now, this is still around today, guys. Okay? And this guarantees the right of workers to join unions. Okay? So if the Bishop Carroll teachers wanted to do that, we could legally form a union. Okay? And the National Labor Relations Board can stop unfair practices against unions by businesses. Now, labor unions really like this. Now, this board consists of 3 people. The National Labor Relations Board has 3 people. Those people are appointed by who? The president. Okay. Now, if you get a new president, Biden, okay, he doesn't get to just can all 3 of them and pick his own 3. Okay. If somebody retires or resigns, then the president gets to fill the vacancy. It's kind of like the chorus. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, since there's 3 people on this National Labor Relations Board. I want to give you an example of something in recent history that they got involved with. Okay. You guys all know what Boeing is. Boeing headquarters out of Seattle, Washington. Did I talk to you guys about right to work states? We do this yet in here? Okay. Some states are what are called union shops. So think of your blue states politically: California, Oregon, Washington, New York, Michigan. Well, not Michigan anymore. But those are called union shops. So if you work for Boeing and there's a union for the sheet metal workers, they can force you to join it. You don't have a choice. In Kansas, if you work for Spirit and you're a sheet metal worker and there's a union, you can choose to join that union or you can choose not to, because Kansas is what's called a right to work state. You have a right to work in the state of Kansas and not join the union. With me? Now, in no states can they force you to join a union if you are a government employee, a public sector union. So if you're a public school teacher in California, they cannot force you to join the teachers union. Kansas, they cannot force you to join the teachers union. Everybody with me on that? Okay. But in private businesses, they can force you to join a union. In union shop states, right to work states, no. Everybody follow me there? Think I explained that? Yeah.
What happens if
Well, you could face some repercussions from the union, I guess. Now, like, let's say 259. Okay, 259 over here. Northwest. Well, my good buddy Tom O'Connor teaches at Northwest. Okay. He is not a member of the teachers union. However, the union bargains with 259 for all the teachers' contracts. So he benefits from the union, even though he doesn't join it. You follow me? Now, what you're probably going to face is some criticism from your employees that are in the union. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, come on, man, I'm paying my dues and I'm helping you make more money because the union's helping you because I'm paying my dues. You need to pay your dues, man. Get on board. That's about all you're going to face. Okay? Now, with that being said, sorry, I'm going to draw a crude map. Yeah, I'm so bad at this. Boeing in Washington, Seattle, Washington headquarters. Okay, it's a union shop. All right, they build planes. Okay, well, Boeing wanted to open a new plant. South Carolina. They want to build a new plant in South Carolina. Okay, South Carolina is a right to work state. Okay, so as they build this new plant in South Carolina, they may not even have a union because it's a brand new plant. You're going to hire new workers. They may not even have a union. So you're paying people, sheet metal workers in Washington State, $50 an hour. The union has done its job. It's got you good money. Okay? So Boeing wants to build a new plant here. They can pay people $28 an hour. This would save Boeing a lot of money, wouldn't it? So the union sued Boeing when they wanted to build a plant in South Carolina. And they said they're trying unfair business practices against the union by building this plant in South Carolina. Now, the National Labor Relations Board said, yeah, Boeing's doing that. That's wrong. It was 2-1. They said, Boeing, you can't build that plant in South Carolina. This one guy that voted no, saying they should be able to allow it to be built there, he quit in protest. He said, this is ridiculous. So you're telling me you're going to control what a business can do, where they can build their plant. How about we just send it down to Mexico? Follow me on this? Guys, Huntsville, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama. You know what they're building in those cities in Alabama? They're building cars. They used to be built in Detroit. Now they're assembling them in Alabama and Kentucky that are right to work states. And people that work and build these cars make a good living, but the cost of living in Huntsville, Alabama is a hell of a lot cheaper than it is in Detroit, Michigan. So you can pay people less. A lot of time there's no union. People make a good living. Businesses can compete against foreign cars coming in. Okay. In fact, some of the cars that are being built in Alabama are Mercedes. Mercedes is assembling vehicles here. Okay. So eventually, after about 2 years, they relented and let Boeing build that plant in South Carolina. Okay. Just an example. Okay. All right. Now, little political cartoon down here, kind of funny, maybe not. If you want to upgrade, if you want more money, you want to make more money, upgrade your skills. And this guy says, well, I'm already taking a computer class, but I can add another class. I could add another course. He goes, here's one that should help. Introduction to Organizing a Union. Want to make more money? Okay. All right. Moving on. Okay, there's another question. This stuff's boring, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is boring. You got to put something in there, okay? Now, there's another question on your homework, okay, about Roosevelt and the Supreme Court, okay? And as I already told you, I used to have 2 erasers. Let's get rid of that god-awful mess. A lot of these programs are going to be declared unconstitutional, right? So in 1936, this is when they really start to hit Roosevelt, okay? In 1936, they strike down the processing tax, the manufacturing processing tax. Remember, they told farmers, don't plant, we'll send you a cash bonus. They taxed manufacturers, got money from them, and paid farmers not to plant. Remember that? Unconstitutional. Can't do that. Can't tax Peter to pay Paul for doing nothing. Okay? To get around this, Roosevelt and Congress passed the Soil Conservation and Adjustment Act. Okay? So we're going to restrict production in the name of conservation, not so much reducing surpluses. So the government's going to pay farmers to plant certain types of crops, ones that are soil conserving. Okay, guys, when you plant wheat over and over and corn over and over again, it depletes the soil of certain nutrients and minerals. You can grow certain crops in between to help replenish those nutrients and minerals. Any examples? Alfalfa, soybeans is a big one. Okay. Anything that's grown in the ground as well, like peanuts, potatoes, it helps replenish the soil. Okay, but soybeans is what a lot of people around here grow. Then the Supreme Court says certain powers of the SEC were unconstitutional, and then here's a big one. The Supreme Court is going to strike down the minimum wage as unconstitutional. Nowhere in the Constitution does it give the authority of the federal government to tell a private business how much they have to pay their employees. That's what the Supreme Court said in 1936. Mr. Ebright, how do we have a federal minimum wage now when it was declared unconstitutional in 1936? We have a federal minimum wage of $7.25. Now, states can do additional on top of that. Are the 9 Supreme Court justices that were on the court in 1936 still alive? No, they're all dead. You get new judges that interpret the Constitution a different way. Yes? Now, that's not what actually happened in this case. This case, which you might want to write about on a test, deals with a minimum wage. Okay? There's 9 justices. Yes? Roosevelt is pissed because they're going to declare the entire NRA, you know, when we call it fascist, that whole thing is unconstitutional. Okay? He's mad. Okay? So Roosevelt says, you know what? I'm going to pack the court. What's that mean? Yeah. He wants to add 6. And then he wants to put a retirement age of 70. Okay? Now, 2 of the 9 justices that were on the court were over the age of 70. So, Roosevelt would be able to appoint 8 new justices to the Supreme Court, which would be a majority of the new 15. Does this not smack of dictatorship? Does this not smack of one branch of government trying to overtake another branch of government and control it? Now, Roosevelt floats this idea. You know who's pissed at him? Everybody, including Democrats. They're like, Roosevelt, you can't be doing this. It's a bad idea. Okay? But when he floated this idea of a retirement age, these 2 old men that were part of the 9, they're like, man, we don't want to lose our job. So they switched their vote on what? The minimum wage. So, newspaper headline comes out. So these 2 old men switched their vote on the minimum wage, saying now that it is constitutional, they saved their jobs, okay, and they saved 9. So the court will not be packed with 6 new justices. It will stay at 9. Can you explain that to me on a test? Okay, Joanna can. All right? Get this?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a newspaper headline. Okay. Now Roosevelt is mad. Okay, because a lot of these programs he thinks are going to help. So this political cartoon here shows the Supreme Court here, or no, this is FDR. Okay, and then this is the Supreme Court like in a horse and buggy situation with all these automobiles behind it. They say things like child labor laws, Social Security, and so forth. All these things he's trying to do, but the Supreme Court won't get out of the way. You know what I'm saying? So Roosevelt's like this, okay? Now, one of the ways government gets around the minimum wage, and they still use this today, is the Government Contracts Act. So Boeing builds Air Force One for the president, right? The plane for the president. So if Boeing wants to continue to build new Air Force Ones as years go by, the government says to Boeing, says, look, if you want this contract to build Air Force One, you will pay your employees this much. Does that make sense? So we see this a lot today. So if you want a big contract from the government, say you're Raytheon or McDonnell Douglas, you're going to build, you know, F-22s and F-35s. The federal government's going to say, you got to pay your employees this much. They need these benefits. if you want this contract for billions of dollars. Yes. Okay. So the labor secretary can set these minimum wages, maximum hours for government contracted work. Now, the Congress has to pass any type of minimum wage increase. Okay. And you can see it started in 1938 at 25 cents an hour. And it's gone up ever since. Now, guys, there's obviously a very good ideological argument that people can have about the minimum wage. You know, this is a tough conversation to have with high school students. But actually, it's not as bad as it used to be. How many of you guys have jobs? Leave your hand up if you work for minimum wage. Who works for minimum wage anymore? If you're working for minimum wage, you need to get another freaking job. You know what I'm saying? You guys have more value than that. You guys are Bishop Carroll Catholic High School students in an honors class. They should be paying you $15 an hour or more. Because you have value. You're smart. You know how to wear a uniform. You know how to show up on time. Most of us. You know how to take direction. You're respectful. Most of us. You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you hire a Bishop Carroll student? Okay, it makes sense. All right, so, guys, this idea of a minimum wage, this is where it really bothers me, okay? And you can disagree with me, Dom, if you want. But the minimum wage, if they keep raising it, okay, $7.25 is fine, whatever. I don't even think we should have one. But if you raise it to $15 an hour or $12 an hour, then the people that are hurt most by this are not the kids that go to Bishop Carroll High School. It's the kids that go to West High School. Because they're not going to pay somebody that has trouble showing up on time, taking direction, $12 an hour. They're just not going to do it. Okay? If you could pay somebody $5 an hour, then what people get is experience. So when you go for your next job, they're going to say, well, what kind of experience do you have? Well, if you can never get your foot in the door and get a job, even if it just pays $5 an hour for summer work, okay, then you have no experience. You don't learn how to work. Guys, working at McDonald's is just training. It's learning how to be an employee, learning how to take direction, learning how to manage your money, these sorts of things that teenagers need. And when we keep raising the minimum wage, guys, we're taking teenagers opportunities for experience, work experience, life experience away from them. And when kids don't learn how to work as a teenager, what happens when they maybe don't finish high school and they've never had a job? What's going to happen? Well, you're seeing it all over the country. And I'm not blaming our crime problem and so forth on the minimum wage, but I think it's a factor, and it can be a factor. Okay? You got to provide opportunities for kids to learn. And the job you do should be based on your value. Now, how do they value me? I mean, I have a pretty important job. I'm a teacher. You know, in some countries, we are revered. I go out in public around, you know, ordinary people, and I say I'm a teacher. They're like, oh, okay. You're not very important. Now, my wife, Coke Industries values her a lot. You know what I mean? Because she can do stuff that I can't. Even if I tried, I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? So she makes a lot of money because she has a lot of value. Okay? Shouldn't you be paid based on your value of the work that you can do? Any of you guys work with anybody like that makes the same amount of money as you? You got like co-workers that make the same amount as you? Do you think you're a better employee than some of the other people that did the same as you? Usually? Yeah. So does your boss know that? Well, maybe you should tell your boss. Like, you know what? I'm actually quite a bit better at this than these other people. Can I get a raise? Now, guys, that's a tough one. Asking for a raise, okay, based on your value. Now, you have to have confidence in yourself to look your boss in the eye and say, look, I think I bring a lot of value to this company. Okay? And I can take my value to a different company, but I'd like to stay with your company. And I'd really like to make more money and stay here. You think I can get a raise? Okay? Now, you got to have stones to do that. You know what I mean? Like, you got to say that out loud. Okay? And be willing to take your skills elsewhere. You know? I don't do that here. Because I know, I've heard, you know, this, you ask the person over there for a raise, they're going to say, you're going to have to go somewhere else to get that raise. You're not getting it. And I know the answer already. So I'm, you know, I'm just telling you, you guys have value. I know all of you. Okay? You have value. I'm sure you guys would be great at your jobs if you apply yourself. So, all right. That's my thing on that. Okay. Unconstitutional. I put this graph in here, guys. So the light blue are federal laws that were declared unconstitutional. The dark blue are state and local laws. Okay. This goes back to 1789. Really, we don't have unconstitutional till 1803. Judicial Review, Supreme Court case, 1803. 1803? What? Marbury versus Madison. Come on, guys. All right, now, get through here, okay? 1860s, during the Civil War, you see state and local laws being unconstitutional. Okay, and then this is the 20s. That's some of our immigration policies in here, okay? And then this is 60s. This is Jim Crow, okay? Local and state discrimination, Jim Crow, segregation, okay? So this is the time period we're looking at here, okay? Right there, okay? So it is higher than normal, the number of laws declared unconstitutional, federal laws, okay? Then it shrinks during World War II, guys. During a crisis, remember? World War II is a crisis. So the government's going to do some things that are unconstitutional, but they're not going to declare it unconstitutional. You follow me? Like rounding up Japanese Americans and putting them in camps. 56, and then you see quite a bit more of that later on. Okay. All right. Time we get up? 35? I'll save a little bit for Wednesday to finish, okay? And then Thursday will be a review day. Friday will be our test. Sound like a plan? All right. Most of what we got left is kind of politics and stuff. Pretty good stuff.